Some games are just so successful they inspire game developers to base a future title on them. Sometimes developers get too carried away with this inspiration and end up designing games which are complete rip-offs. In this video, 10 video games so good others had to copy, we will be talking about these copycats in much more detail. Before we begin, hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with all of our awesome videos and click that bell to become part of our notification squad. The Simpsons Road Rage. Crazy Taxi is one of those arcade games everyone's played at least once or twice in their lives. You drive around town as a crazy taxi driver, picking people up and driving them to their destination as quickly as possible. The faster you get your passenger to their destination, the more points you get. Simple as that. The game was so successful it was ported to the Sega Dreamcast a year later in 2000. Make no mistake about it, The Simpsons Road Rage was a lot of fun. It was a blast to drive around Springfield and give iconic characters like Bart and Marge lifts around the city. Doesn't this all sound really familiar though? Well, as you all can tell, what made the game fun was the fact it took a lot of elements from the classic title Crazy Taxi and slapped on some Simpsons characters. There was no doubt the game would sell well, seeing as it had the Simpsons brand on it. Sega believed the game was too similar to Crazy Taxi, so they actually filed a lawsuit against Fox Interactive and Electronic Arts. The case was settled in private, so I guess everyone's happy in the end. BANJO-KAZOOIE. Almost every gamer played Super Mario 64 and absolutely loved it. It was the first 3D game starring Mario, and you could tell the developers put a lot of effort into this installment. The game controlled well, and it was a blast to uncover the secrets behind each and every stage on your way to defeat Bowser. While the boss fights with Bowser may have been a bit underwhelming and monotonous at times, the game did have many flaws when it was released in 1996. The game was the most successful Nintendo 64 title of all time, selling nearly 12 million copies. However, there were some developers who decided to blatantly copy almost everything in the game to cash in on its success. Enter BANJO-KAZOOIE. In this game, you play as a bear called Banjo who carries around a bird in his backpack called Kazooie as they try to stop the plans of the witch Gruntilda and rescue Banjo's sister. The game involves going into different levels to obtain jigsaw pieces instead of stars. That being said, BANJO-KAZOOIE was a huge success and many gamers actually preferred the game to Super Mario 64. Maybe that was because Rare had a full 2 years to come up with the fresh ideas after the release of Super Mario 64. SYPHON Filter. Good old Metal Gear Solid, known for their tactical espionage action. The game series has garnered many fans throughout the years despite having some of the most convoluted plots in gaming. In Metal Gear Solid, you play as Snake, who can only be described as a spy, soldier, and mercenary hybrid. The cast of characters you will meet throughout the story of the game are relatable and well developed. Metal Gear Solid is one of the most successful franchises to ever be released on PlayStation. For those of you who are fans of the franchise, you are well aware most of the plot in Metal Gear Solid comprises of government conspiracies, nuclear weapons, and treachery. For those of you who are not aware, SYPHON Filter carries almost the exact same story in Agent. It was almost as if the developers played the Metal Gear Solid games millions of times to get a good grasp on the story and characters so they can copy them into their installment. Though it is not to say the game wasn't successful. This title was a bestseller in UK for some time, and many installments of SYPHON Filter have been developed by SCE Bend since the release of the original in 1999. Battletoads. Who remembers the insanely difficult Super Nintendo game Battletoads? That beat-em-up fighting game was rage-inducing as most players struggled to simply get past the second level. These shredded toads looked awfully similar to another set of anthropomorphic sea animals. Oh yeah, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. What's interesting about these two franchises is the fact that Battletoads themselves are a copy of the Ninja Turtles, yet the Super Nintendo game Turtles in Time is a complete rip-off of Battletoads, which was released a year earlier. The thought process when designing the Battletoads must have been pretty simple. We need a different sea animal than a turtle. We must make sure they're not obsessed with pizza, and we gotta name them after skin blemishes instead of Renaissance painters. Thus, the three Battletoads, Rash, Zitz, and Pimple, were born. Surprisingly, it seems to have worked out for them as the game sold quite well. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Turtles in Time is often seen as a superior game to Battletoads simply because gamers are more familiar with the Ninja Turtles, and this game actually had a bearable difficulty level, making it much more accessible to a wider audience. Bubsy. Sonic the Hedgehog, the mascot of Sega. Sonic was Sega's answer to Mario. This side-scrolling speed demon quickly became a fan favorite. Sonic is one of the most iconic characters in video game history, but has seen a fall from grace recently. His latest titles have tarnished the Sonic name because, well, it's been a long time since there's been a good Sonic the Hedgehog game. Luckily, Sonic will be returning to his 2D side-scrolling beginnings in Sonic Mania, which will be released in the summer of 2017. What many gamers forget is that there was another character fighting for Sonic's throne atop Sega, known as Bubsy. Bubsy is a rabbit who is the star of a series of video games created by Michael Berlin and developed by Accolade. The levels in the Bubsy games were very strikingly similar to Sonic the Hedgehog. Even the gameplay is quite familiar as it consists of Bubsy jumping and gliding around. While Bubsy's character handled more like Knuckles than Sonic, it was obviously what Accolade was trying to do. However, despite copying Sonic the Hedgehog, Bubsy was actually quite successful and the developers produced 2 more installments of the franchise. NEUTOPIA 2. The Legend of Zelda is up there with Super Mario Bros. As one of the most successful Nintendo franchises of all time. The dungeons in The Legend of Zelda are often very well thought out and not too difficult. Except for you, Water Temple. When you find out how to solve a puzzle, you often just stare in amazement, thinking to yourself, really? That's all I had to do? How did I not think of that? You feel unstoppable at times, exploring the world of Hyrule with your sword and shield in hand. These action-adventure games have set the standard for the genre, inspiring many games throughout the years. What happens when developers are inspired a little bit too much by a game? You get NEUTOPIA 2. NEUTOPIA 2 was developed by Hudson Soft for the TurboGrafx 16 back in 1992. The game is a shameless rip-off of the Legend of Zelda series. Even by looking at the box art, you just know the game has copied everything from the Zelda games. Though the levels, gameplay, and sound have been improved, the game shares many similarities with the Legend of Zelda. The visuals and gameplay just scream Zelda. There's really no denying it. In NEUTOPIA 2, you control a young boy roaming around a 2D environment. Need we say any more? KONAMI KRAZY Racers. Mario Kart is easily one of the most entertaining game franchises on the market. Whether you're playing single-player or multiplayer mode, the game is just pure fun. Sometimes the game can get a little frustrating and may even ruin friendships from time to time, but there is no denying the series' success. Getting hit by a blue shell at the final straightaway and finishing in 4th place is all just part of the Mario Kart charm. Even people who don't consider themselves gamers have played this game at one point or another. Yet, with great success comes great imitation, and Mario Kart was no different. KONAMI KRAZY Racers was released for the Game Boy Advance in 2001. The game was Konami's answer to the iconic Nintendo franchise. By quickly looking at the cover of the game, it's easy to believe it is a Mario Kart game. KONAMI KRAZY Racers is actually an insanely fun title because of the fact it's a rebranded Mario Kart. Right down to the tracks and items, this game is a spitting image of the more successful Mario Kart. Oh, Konami, there's a big difference between inspiration and a lack of creativity. Angry Birds. This may come as a shock to many, but it turns out Angry Birds actually copied a lesser-known game to become the most downloaded mobile title of all time. Crush the Castle started the whole throwing things at structures to make them fall down trend. Crush the Castle is a free browser game created 8 months before the release of Angry Birds by Armor Games in 2009. The game involves throwing projectiles at a castle to destroy all the inhabitants. There are 8 different projectiles with different abilities. The goal of Angry Birds is to slingshot birds at a structure to destroy all the pigs. It is essentially a rebrand of Crush the Castle. We have to give Angry Birds credit though because they really livened up the bland visuals of Crush the Castle. Most levels are very similar in Crush the Castle with a bland color scheme, but Angry Birds is a very colorful game with colors that just pop right off the screen. Angry Birds also gave a personality to the projectiles being launched by making them living things instead of boring old stones. Both games have made plenty of installments, but we all know which one is the more successful one. All-Stars Battle Royale. The Super Smash Bros. Franchise burst onto the scene in 1999 and has not looked back since. These games are known as some of the best party games of all time due to the endless fun you can have in multiplayer mode. Being able to play as your favorite Nintendo character with your friends and beat each other up is one of the many qualities of the game. Learning the ins and outs of each character and deciding which one to main is absolutely essential to your success. Each installment improves on the previous one by bringing something new to the series. Super Smash Bros. Was a smashing hit, and like every game on this list, there were many developers who had their eye on this game. Developers wondered if they could make a fighting game with characters from their brand. Hence, PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale was born. The game had your favorite characters from PlayStation franchises such as Big Daddy from BioShock and Sackboy from Little Planet. Instead of smash attacks and a damage system, there were special moves which would immediately kill your opponent if you made contact. The game, though, just looks and feels like a less sophisticated Super Smash Bros. ROBOPON. Pokémon, the game's so nice they make it twice. Nearly every year we're treated to two versions of these amazing games. There's not much of a difference between the two versions besides the Pokémon you can catch, but that doesn't stop hardcore fans from buying both games. Whether your goal is to collect every Pokémon available or play competitively in tournaments online, there's no one way to play the games. There have been so many Pokémon clones throughout the years, it's difficult to single out just one of them. ROBOPON is one of the most interesting Pokémon copycats out there to date. ROBOPON Sun, Star, and Moon were released in 2000, only 2 months after the release of Pokémon Gold and Silver. The game is the most obvious ripoff you will ever see. The player looks exactly like the one you control in Gold and Silver. Even the fighting screen is the same. You also must defeat 7 of the greatest ROBOPON collectors on the island. See what we mean? Somehow the game earned a sequel which was surprisingly successful. ROBOPON 2, Ring and Cross were much different from their predecessors. It became a mix of Pokémon and Final Fantasy, but with robots. There you have it. Some of these games were such huge ripoffs, it's a miracle only one of the developers were sued. Let us know about any of the video game copycats that we might have missed in the comments section below. Also, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button to keep up to date with our awesome videos. Thanks for watching.